This is a buck that I saw while I was hunting last year on public out in Kansas. And Brian Ross found this side and he mailed it to me. And I found this side maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks after he found this side. So when he found this, the tips were, this was chewed off, this was chewed off, this was chewed off. And then when I found this side, a couple of the tips were chewed off. So this video, I'm just gonna show how I went through and fixed these tines. I've been fixing some antlers for the last couple of years. And Kansas shed hunter, Brian Ross found this one and I found the other half. So I'm gonna try to fix both of these together and see if I can get them pretty close. This one's probably gonna be pretty challenging because the velvet is still on there in places, but I'm gonna do my best and show you how I'm gonna do this. Fix It Sculpt is what I use. Get an 1/8 inch drill bit. This is sealing wire. I get it from work, from the sealing guys. First thing I gotta do is drill all these out. I already drilled this one. Smells gross. The smell of bone is disgusting. But try not to drill through the side of it because then you'll have another hole to fix. So sometimes I super glue these, but on the last one I did, I hot glued it and it seemed to work fine. But we'll see. That one. We have lots of pictures of this deer before he got all chewed up, so I'm going to try to do my best to fix it as accurately as possible to how the deer looked. This is a 12 gauge sealing wire. I drilled the hole, put the hot glue in, slid it down, and then I cut this. I leave it long. I always leave it longer because I can cut it down later once I get the shape that I want. Second hole. See that? Okay, that's how it started. So that's for that one. Start like that. Let that glue should be set up already, but I'll let that sit there. I've been doing the same thing for all these, leaving them long. Hot glue. Put this in here. Get it started in the hole. And then good. All right. Now I got to start looking at some pictures of this deer, figuring out how long the main beam is. I'll measure this main beam that's not chewed just to see how similar they are. And like I'll compare them and try to get this thing as accurate as possible. Put the wires in and I leave them long. Forgot about this point coming off the back that he has that splits at the end. I'll go through and I'll look at my pictures. I'll find a picture like that and I'll zoom in and I'll just try to get an idea. I'll look at like how far this little point is on this angle, see how far it is to try to get it as accurate as possible. I'll look at all the different angles and just try to get the tines as close as I can to be in the right size. And there's that little point again. It splits at the end. So I have more pictures, I have videos. So I'm just gonna do what I can to get it as accurate as possible. I've been looking at pictures for the last hour, I'd say, and videos and scrolling through it and trying to figure out like where each tine goes. So I know probably most people won't get that crazy, but I cut these down a little bit shorter than where I think each of them should go. This, I might need to, I think this is like exact, so I might cut this back a tiny bit so it's not poking out. And then I forgot that there was a split on this one, so I drilled a separate hole. Sometimes when I do a split tine, I'll wrap another wire around this, but this is feeling pretty good, so I'll probably just leave it. Sometimes I will wrap a tiny wire around that, twist it, just to hold that together. But this epoxy is pretty good. I never did one with velvet on it before, so I'm gonna cover up these antlers so that I don't get any epoxy on the velvet itself. So I'm gonna coat this probably with some painter's tape, maybe wrap a paper towel around it first, and then tape that before I work on this, just because this stuff will wipe off of the antler pretty easy if you get it on and you get it off right away. But I don't know what will happen if it gets on this, so I'm gonna protect it. I'm doing this antler for someone else, that's why I'm trying to protect it. I don't want to mess this antler up. Do what I can to make it as clean as possible. There's two parts, part A and part B. Take equal parts like this. This is a lot. I have a lot of tines to fix. You don't need that much usually. So just take it and start mixing it together. I think you're supposed to wear gloves, but if you ever try to mix this stuff and use gloves, good luck. You rip your gloves right off every time I've tried it, which is maybe only like once. So I always use my hands, but if you want to use gloves, use gloves. So I'll just mix this together for a while. Okay, so I've been kneading this together for about 2 minutes. You are definitely supposed to wear gloves. Let's shred the directions. It says wear gloves. So I've been kneading this for 2 minutes. It's all one color now. And then you're supposed to set and let it sit for 5 minutes for better results, which I don't usually ever do that. I just start putting it on because it takes a while. So I'll start shaping a couple times and I'll show you how that works. I think I'm going to start with this one first because I found this one. So I'll experiment on this one. Small tine first. This is the last tine that I'm going to do because it has the most detail. So I'm going to do all the easy tines first and then I'll mix up a fresh batch and do this. That way it doesn't start drying up on me. When you start with this, it always starts horrible like that. Don't worry about it. Just start it out like that. You'll be able to shape it. You'll be able to, you have 2 to 3 hours working time, but I think it's more like, I think this is 3 to 4 hours or 2 to 3, but it seems like you have about an hour and a half before it starts getting hard the way that I do it. I'll let that sit like that. So you can see like a little bit goes a long way. I'll be taking some off of both of these. Can you see those chew marks that come all the way up here? There's chew marks that come up. So I'm gonna push that in there. I'm gonna smooth that out and then get the texture that I'm trying to get later. I mess with all the tines. They always start out looking horrible, so don't panic if this is the first time you're doing this. See how it's just all wavy and nasty and everything. So it's still soft, but what I like to do is I get a cup of water. Just put your fingers in there. You can smooth it out with the water and just keep working it. and shaping it with the water. That's how you can get it in all the little cracks. And it smooths out nice. The antlers are hardly ever like perfectly straight. They always have some kind of curve or some kind of little bend at the tip. So I always try to put something like that, or depending on the deer, at the end, just to make it look a little bit more realistic. So I'll let this one set up for a little bit. I'll work on the next one. If it's your first time fixing an antler, you might want to just do one at a time instead of doing more than one, because it can be a problem when you're putting the antler down, then you're bending that one. I don't usually fix sheds. I'm usually fixing antlers that deer that people have shot. And then I have my wire pretty close to where I want that to end, so I know this is longer than what I want, so I'm just going to take that off, put that over there, just keep reshaping it. See that epoxy I got on that antler there? I can get that off of there, no problem. But that's why I covered up all the velvet, because I don't know if it'll come off of that velvet or not. But wherever the bone is showing, it comes off pretty easy. But once it dries, it's not gonna come off as easy. You can sand this, but I do not like sanding this. So I try to get it the exact way I want it before it dries. That way all I have to do is paint it. And usually I'll have Sarah come and look at it and tell me if it's too fat, if it's too thin. Okay, I'm gonna let these sit for a minute. This is just this is way smaller than what it is. This is just to help hold this in, and I'll come back later and fix this tine. This is a split tine, so. I got the shape pretty much how I want it. So then I'll just come back now and I'll start adding some detail. This just helps with the paint to get some colors in there. You don't want to draw straight lines, but I just put like a little bit of texture in like that. And I mean, that does not look good, so after you get a little texture, this helps when you go to paint. I'll come back with like a brush that's pretty stiff, add a little water to it. Just kind of feed those lines out. Can you see that on there or not? Just mess with it until I get the texture that I want. This antler is really rough from the velvet. You can even use the back of this too. All right, so it's the next morning. These are dry. You can see these, I put a little bit of detail on there. Like scraped a little bit of detail in there and then like ran my finger over to kind of smooth it out a little bit. That'll help when I go to paint it, having a little detail. And then I started working on this. I don't know if I showed yesterday, but I put 2 wires in here because this tine splits at the end. I'm starting this new point, coming off the back, trying to follow the shape that it was. You can see this tine's coming off like this, hooking back this way. The top point was stuck out a little bit farther than the other one. So I'm just getting the basic shape, and as it hardens up, it'll be easier to work. I'm leaving this one a little bit thicker than I did these tines because I'm gonna actually scrape into this and get some detail like this, because the brow tines and the bottom points are usually the bumpiest. So I'm gonna put some detail on this base back scratcher tine. So they always start off rough looking, and then as it dries, you can add the detail. So this is that paintbrush I was using yesterday for some detail. Like, it's way too early now, but you can wet this, and it's not like a good paintbrush. This thing has epoxy on it, so it's hard. So it's almost like I can put detail in it and smooth it over my finger, get a little bit of, this will help with the paint. So keep working at this, and then I'll start painting. So I'm trying to keep this smooth with the time where it was chewed or where it was broken off. So that way I don't have a bump, like where you come across and you have a bump and then you have to sand it, because then if you sand it, you're gonna take out some of your detail. But what I do is I get my finger wet and I do try to establish, like if you see a bump coming across here where it was, try to establish that like high section up the tine. And then like you'll notice on this antler, it's not round. It doesn't just go round and then point. It goes like, it's kind of rounded and then it flattens out here, and then it kind of rounds out. It goes to a point and there's bumps everywhere. So these base tines and brow tines, you have to put a lot more work into. The tips of them, if this gets broken off, it's easy. You just build a tine, put a little bit of texture in it. But with these, you have to put a lot more work. That's why I saved this to do this one totally separate. So, trying to follow this vein up. And then I'm almost gonna keep this as like a main tine, and this is just gonna be like a secondary point coming off. Because that's what the picture looked like. as it dries up, I'll start adding detail to it. So it's not a quick process for a detailed tine, but, and then like, if you see, like I'll squeeze this kind of. If you have to, you can use a tool. You can always smooth it out. You have a few hours to work with this, so it's really nice. Trying to get a shape. I'm making these little balls and just giving little detail. I've actually never done it this way before. I've always shaped them out with this, but I'm trying this because I think this might work a little bit better. Maybe not. I'm carving out some detail like this. And then with a wet brush, I can smooth it out. That's way too straight of a line. I like these bumps. Smooth them out. Get in here. Finished the tines yesterday, dried overnight, did this one this morning. Still a little soft, but it's good to be painted. First coat is simple. I'm usually just gonna start with a warm white. It's the oil paint. Got this at Michael's. You don't need much at all. Then a little bit of yellow ochre. So this one is super white. Like you look at this one, I'm just trying to get the base color. I don't know if you can tell in the video, but this one's really, really white. So like that white almost matches it. Can you tell in the video? This is almost the color of this white. So I might not even mix these. I might just put that on. And then I have some
You gotta say what that is.
that is this odorless paint thinner. That's what it's called. All right, so I'm just thinning out this paint with a little paint thinner. I'm gonna start on this tine because this is gonna be the easiest one to start with, just to see if it's. That might need a little bit of this. It does not take much paint at all. I'll just add a little of this. And a lot of times, and I'll take like a paper towel. Just wipe it off if I don't like it. Painting's the hardest thing for me because I'm not an artist. Sarah usually helps me mix the colors. I have a hard time figuring it out, but you just keep mixing until you're gonna be putting a bunch of coats on, so don't worry about. Don't worry too much about like what it looks like at first. So I come onto the antler a little bit, just a little bit, to try to blend it. Don't need a lot of paint at all. Okay, let me get this one now. I'll put a little bit more yellow ochre in this. For this one, because this is going to be a dark tine on the bottom. So just start it a little bit darker to start with. I'll coat this whole tine, and then that's step one of the painting. Then what I'll do, after I coat all three of these tines, I'm gonna shake this can really good and spray it with a light coat of this, really light, just to seal it so I can put my next layer on. And then that's it for now. So the base colors I sealed the other day, and I came back and I just worked on this one a little bit. You can see that I started blending it. So what I did was took a little bit of raw umber and just a little bit of gray, just natural gray. And I'll show you on this one. But this is the one that started. Can you tell the colors? Put a little bit raw umber underneath here where it's dark, and then it fades to more bone on the top. So I'm gonna coat these, spray these, and then add to it later. So what I'll start doing is taking sometimes I'll use this bigger brush too, and just dab the paint. Dry paint, you do not need a lot at all. And just super lightly just kind of like barely brushing it on. And then I'll take a thinner brush like that and get it into some of these grooves that I cut. So you can start out with the paint. Down in the grooves, and I tried to continue it down past where the tine is real. This is just raw lumber. So it's real dark. I'm not gonna film this whole thing, but you can kind of come back and blend it. Then you could wipe it off of the, because it's sealed underneath, it's more white. You can kind of wipe it away if you want. We're just gonna keep layering paints a little bit at a time until I get this the way I want it. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of gray in there. Can you see this? Let me see if I can get it right here. Can you see that right there, sir? So this tine here, I've been going along with my thin brush. The paint's dry. Just going a little bit thicker, just going through these lines. And then as I come to the end, I just put a little bit of paint on the end like this. Come in here. And then, can you see that? This is dry as well. Just kind of real lightly. Try to blend it in. And I can seal this and put some more coats on there too, so don't have to get it all done in a couple coats. You can put multiple layers on to give it more depth. So that's how that's starting for now. As I was just editing the video, I saw that I did a really poor job showing how I painted them, mainly because Sarah was helping me and that she wasn't there the one day when I was showing how I painted them. But some of these are still not exactly perfect. I might work on these a little bit more. And then I came through, these were a little darker than I liked. I just came through with this rough epoxy brush. I just kind of dug down in there just to kind of bring some of that white back up. And then I might do a little bit more painting on this before I call it. But I think this one turned out pretty good on this side, because this is where the velvet kind of came in and it was pretty dark up there. I'm okay with that. That main beam looks good. So the last step I didn't really show was, this is what I didn't show too well. That's the spray that I'm using in between coats of paint. And the last coat, shake it really well. That's it. Don't want to soak it because you don't want it to get real shiny and glossy. It's a matte finish. So that's it for that one. So I was pretty much done, but I don't love this tine right here. So I came out with a Dremel, and I'm going to add a little detail into the back, carve a little bit more out of this, and then see if that's any better when I'm done with that. All right, I added some more definition to that, and I'm going to paint it up and see how it looks. So I think I'm done with all the tines that I fixed, except for this one. I did not like this one. I don't know if it's just the way I painted it and I sealed it, but I went out with a Dremel and put some more detail into it, made it a little bit thinner. It's not quite as smooth. So I'm going to paint this and then I'll be done. But if you made it to the end of the video and you saw things that I was doing totally wrong, you have better tips, leave them in the comments. If you have some painting tricks that you could help me with, let me know about them. That's it.